welcome to Cover Story. This week we are discussing a rather sensitive topic. What should our response be towards rape victims? In a way that is both sensitive and realistic towards their trauma. For this with me, I have a panel of experts. We have Seema Goswami, columnist and a social commentator. I have Dr. Deepak Raheja. He's a senior psychiatrist and psychotherapist at Foundation Hope. And Pratibha Prahlad. She's a Bharatanatyam dancer and also a social commentator. Seema, I'm going to begin with you because there are two reasons really why I chose this topic this week. One, of course, is Salman Khan's recent comments saying that he worked very hard on a film set and after that he felt like he'd been raped. A comment that he, as you know, has refused to apologize for. And the second is very interesting, is I found from one of your tweets, in fact, if I'm going to quote your tweet, where you said, yes, rape jokes are beyond the pale, but do we also really help survivors by acting as if getting raped is worse than anything, even death? I found this very interesting. In fact, this, and the fact is that our reaction towards rape survivors by telling them, oh, this is the worst thing that's possible, doesn't really help them.
I agree. In fact, the first thing that, why I said this was, I remember many years ago when we had a very, very traumatic rape incident occur in Delhi. We had a minister, a female minister at the time, who referred to the rape survivor, she still hadn't died, as a zinda lash. Acting as if because she was raped, she was in effect dead, which I think is very unhelpful, because what you're saying to the victim of a crime is that what has happened to you is so awful that it maybe would have been better if you died, which I think is a terrible, terrible message to convey. What we really should be telling people who are raped or are subject of any crime of any sort is, okay, this has happened to you, it is terrible, it's traumatic, it's going to take you years to get over with the whole trauma process, the healing, the grieving, but your life is not over. You still have lots of things to look forward to. I mean, you have your job, you have your family, you have your children. There's so many things that are there for you which are positive. So don't focus on the negative, that this one thing has happened to me and now life is not worth living, because life is not just a single incident of crime. Your life is so much more than that, which is why I sent out that tweet that if you're raped or sexually assaulted or whatever, of course it's awful. I mean, it's terrible. I couldn't even imagine the trauma that people go through, but it cannot be the end of life as you know it. Do you agree with me? You're the psychiatrist.
Yeah, yes. Of course, I do agree with what you're saying, but a slight departure from there. I think it may not be totally fair to equate any crime with a crime like rape. Sometimes, the flip side or the paradox is that when we want to trivialize something too much, it can be perceived by the mind as being lack of sensitivity and not being able to empathize. Now, what really happens is, I totally agree with all that you've said, I mean, just trying to make it horrific and the end of life is nothing but secondary victimization. So, a victim is already dealing with so much of pain and trauma, and at the end of it, for a society to quote that maybe you were better off as dead,
Zinda
maybe
lash,
this was zinda lash, is
no,
making
but
it
can
worse.
can I just intervene here and say that the case that you are referring to, where the minister made that comment, she was zinda lash. I mean, because hers was not. I mean, she was not just penetrated
but had
into.
She survived?
No, but there was no chance, right? I mean, the minister had seen her, everybody had seen her, and there was this outpour because this lady was actually mauled. I mean, she was mauled.
I agree with you,
in a very
Pratibha,
animalistic kind of a fashion. So I
every
don't think
single
that
rape
it's fair
victim,
to.
every
No, I'm not
single
talking
rape
about-
victim was listening to the minister.
No, there are people listening to the minister, but that particular rape was so horrendous and so horrible, only etched in our memory, that we know for sure that that girl was not just raped. She was, she was like...
She was brutalized.
She was brutalized, she was mauled, she was like completely, like finished. So that comment, I think, should be taken out of this context. But I do, I have a small little departure again from what you said. While it is the most horrible thing that can happen to a woman. Since we are women, we know what it is. But of course, you have to fight for survival. If there is even an iota of chance for survival, you have to be able to fight society and survive. And I think that, we have to be a speech-sensitive society. And, I think Salman Khan's remark was insensitive. But then I don't think, I mean, that his is a departure from what other people say normally, because you see what's happened to us in our country is that we're not sensitized to the usage of some words. You know,
We can apologize if we said this, if we really
But
felt.
frankly,
no, but I don't think that they even understand that they have said something wrong.
But
You know,
do
that
you
is what
really
I'm trying
want
to say, that they're not sensitive to word usage, to nomenclatures of a word.
But Pratibha, I have a different point of view. Why are we paying so much attention to Salman
That's
Khan?
right. I mean, we
Who
shouldn't.
is he? I mean, he's a film actor.
Because he has a lot of people following him, people should not think this
Yeah,
is okay to crack jokes like
Yeah,
that.
but why
also,
give him so much importance?
You know, it is colloquial, very. It's an expression, you know, and
No, he's an idiot, basically.
you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
let's just
It's
accept
a very
that.
stupid-
Let's
It's
accept
a
that
very
and move
stupid
on.
remark.
You know, it's no point.
No, but
Because we are worried because Salman Khan has a Me Too following, you know, people will think this is cool to say stuff like that. That's why I think the uproar.
But I think also the role of society is very
Which is
important,
what
you
I
know,
want to discuss
sensitizing the society, you know, how we accept it, how we empathize with a situation like that, how much are we willing to not just mock or just look at episodes, incidents like this as TRP material or sensational
Priya,
news,
just
you know.
let's think about our own youth, okay? So when we were in college, it was not cool to use the word rape in any context, because the word had, you know, a very, very deep connotation, and the word was used sparsely. It wasn't used not such a commonplace word as it is today. It was used sparsely, and when one, you know, mentioned that word, it actually meant what the word is supposed to mean, right? So what I'm saying is that when you don't give weightage to words and use it loosely in any context, then you don't know, you have those kinds of silly remarks.
Okay.
But on the other hand, Pratibha, when we were growing up, I remember that every single Hindi movie had a rape scene.
Yes.
I mean, that was like a titillating factor, that the heroine would get raped by this villain and the hero would come and rescue her.
But it was supposed to be bad.
I think-
but that was trivializing rape too.
No, but I think, Seema, that in those kinds of contexts, there is this good man and there's a bad man. Those kinds of distinctions are very, very
Yeah, but
clearly
that's
drawn.
the
Like
point.
a hero, villain. A villain does bad things, a hero does good things.
You
Now
know,
all
please
those lines have
also,
merged, you
it's
know. That's the
important
problem.
to know, irrespective of how it is portrayed, we must clearly know that rape is usually not an act of sexual violence. It is an act of violence. It is a power issue.
It's a power issue,
It is
yes.
not an issue to do with sex, which is why there have been debates and we've had so many panel discussions in terms of, you know, how it can be reduced or prevented, and some people have gone to the extent of saying maybe legalizing prostitution or making commercial sex more easily rampant, or legalizing it might reduce, which is false, which is wrong. It is a power issue, and it is not a sex issue. A lot of these offenders may be normal people who are married, who have a family, and who still would indulge. Normal as in appearing normal. They are not normal. It will be unfair to even remotely to look. They are very, very sick people, and it not only, I think, outrages the modesty of a woman. It is an assault which is beyond imagination to a person who has experienced it. So I think it will be unfair. I think those are the realms of
The
mental
best
health care
advice
work.
you find helps. You deal a lot with
I think, you know, I mean, being sensitive as a society, being sensitive for us as mental health care workers to be able to empathize are very important predicaments which govern how the individual will recover from the trauma. But having said that, the society will have to be more empathetic, and I think such remarks as which have sparked a debate like this are totally uncalled for. I mean, they're bad examples because these are deemed as fashionistas or authority figures, and they have huge fan following. So I think if you make a colloquial drop-off comment which is unacceptable and abhorrable, it is okay to apologize. Why put your foot down and say I didn't say anything wrong? I mean, it's not fair. You haven't been raped. I mean, to Mr. Khan, as he says it, I mean, please go through it. And rape is not just purely, yes, it's not as common in men, but men are raped
But
also.
if you saw the papers this morning, Priya, there was this 13-year-old girl who was
Yes, in Bihar.
dragged out of her hut in Bihar, and penetrated into, and some other object penetrated into her private parts in front of her parents. And this man who barged into her hut did it with his relatives. So I agree with with what you're saying. It's a very male power entitlement game.
It's horrific.
It's horrible. To say it's okay is horrible.
No, when you're talking about Salman Khan, to come back to where we started, I mean, since when is Salman Khan someone to look up to? I mean, look at his movies. They're full of misogynistic and offensive material. If you've seen Dabang, I saw it on fast forward because I couldn't bear to sit through it. But it is misogynistic and awful. And yet there are people who worship him like God.
Very interesting points to be taken, that despite that, the movies have huge multi-crore businesses because
so there's
of
an
what
audience.
The society, there is an audience. People
there is an
relate
audience
with that.
for that.
There is a shift in the way society looks at cinema. From the 90s it started happening. Before the 90s, people used to think of cinema as celluloid and real life as real life. So there was a huge gap between celluloid and real life. But now there's no gap, because everyone thinks that he or she is a hero in real life, right? And they start looking up to these these film stars as the ones who are the conscience keepers of society. I mean, film stars are film stars. They're commercial film stars who are acting out a role. They're not conscience keepers of a society. And to make them much more than they are, and to give them that much importance is really sad. And I think the media is also responsible for it.
I agree. I mean, why should we care what Salman Khan says about rape? I mean, it's more important that we sensitize society, because the one thing that we the word that resonates around rape is always shame. Like, you're supposed to be ashamed of the fact that you've been raped, which is also why we guarantee anonymity to victims, because we don't want them to be embarrassed. We don't want people around them to know that they've been raped, which is a good thing because it allows them that privacy to recover from the trauma. But the subliminal message that you send out when you say that rape victims should remain anonymous is that there is something that they need to be ashamed of. So that shame is something that we need to take away. We take that away from the victim and we put it on the perpetrator. He is the one who has done something to be ashamed of.
Yeah, you have to name and shame the perpetrator. Absolutely.
You have to move that burden of shame away from the woman. And at the moment we don't do that. We still treat it. Whenever a rape thing occurs, like there was the famous Park Street rape, it was all about why was she in the nightclub, why was she drinking, why did she take a lift with these people, why did she do this, A, B, C, D. When you go to a nightclub, you don't expect to be raped. You expect to have a drink, meet people and come home. Nobody asks to be raped when they go to a nightclub and have a drink. But the moment it happens, it's, oh, she must have done something wrong. What was she wearing? How much had she drunk? What did she do? What message did she send out?
This
also the corollary being that children as young as 6 years, 7 years have been raped, and women as old as 90 years have been raped. So it's not really to do with what you wear, and it is just the blur, like you very rightly also pointed out, the blur between the virtual and the real is getting confused, and as it does, people feel they can get away with it. So it's a blatant disregard for law. I mean, the perpetrator very strongly believes that he'll get away with it, and that moment takes over. So I don't think, I think one of the worst thing is the secondary victimization,
But also, doctor, don't you find that so many people don't even report rape? Probably half the people who come to you from counseling
but the core reason for that is the secondary victimization, the shame, You look upon the victim as if she did and asked for it. So questions like, what was she wearing, where was she, why was she having a drink, why did she take a hitch, why was, when that gruesome December episode, rape incident happened, people went on to say, why was she alone, why was she with the,
this narrative has been
changed. A simple thing like, why was she wearing jeans? We have a chief minister saying
so
that.
that shows how sick the society can be, and I think all these things need to change very radically. We can't just wait for society to keep mocking and making comments like this.
These are also feudal and a very patriarchal mindset, and and we know that by and large India, the uneducated or the semi-educated, let's call them, are feudal and patriarchal in their outlook towards life. So cows become property, so women become property. There's a sense of entitlement and a sense of power, right? So this woman who's independent, self-assured, in a pub or a bar or whatever you're saying, ordering a drink, then becomes a suspect because she's there out by herself, enjoying herself. So it almost relates to the fact that they think that women don't have entitlement to enjoy themselves.
And hence
Yeah.
the
By themselves,
analogy comes.
without a male
also
She
figure.
needs to be tame. How
Yes,
can she
how can she be
walk in the
the
same platform
whole
as us?
Yeah.
gender bias, how we bring up our male children and our daughters, how they see and make comments, how, they would,
What is the reaction of the parents or the near ones of the victim? How do they react? Do they say, like what Seema pointed out, that it's a big shame and how do we get her through it? Or do they support her? and saying,
No, I think it is beginning to change a little bit, but I think a lot of work still needs to be done, because immediate reaction is of shame and how to be able to just contain it within, hide it and put it under the carpet, don't talk about it, because the whole family sees it as a shame, as again asking those questions as who was she dating someone, was she in a relationship, she would come often, so these are the immediate half an hour, 1 hour talks that sometimes the family or extended families indulge. And you can, again, I point out, imagine the kind of trauma that it reignites or penetrates further to the person to a woman who's already dealing with the kind of assault we are talking about. So the sensitivity or the lack of it starts from within the family and then extends to the society. And like I said, I think we have to make these milestones in leaps and bounds now. We can't just keep walking baby steps, and when something like this happens, we have panel discussions, debates, and then just forget about it.
Which hasn't
So
done
it's
very
just
much.
the knee-jerk reaction. So I think we need to, there was so much talk after the December gang rape, but how much did really come into force? How much? So I think the government needs to be more sensitized. They need to understand that it doesn't just have to be reactions, and empathizing with the rape victim, dealing with them sensitively, making sure they have the right counseling assistance available is, I think, mandatory and is responsibility of the state. I think as a society we must make sure that they are dealt with sensitively and not just left
Case to case basis.
Case to case basis.
Okay, we need to take a short break. We're going to come back and keep on with this discussion. Welcome back to Cover Story. This week we're discussing the society's response towards a rape victim. In what manner should a society respond in a way that is both helpful and supportive, which is both realistic but also sensitive to the victim's needs? Seema, before that, he was saying that we need to do a transformation and we need to do it really soon. So where should this begin with? So far it's just been left to NGOs and, as he says, panel discussions. Government per se, despite the law, hasn't been able to do much.
I think, Priya, we are actually, as far as rape is concerned, living in several different centuries. If you go and are outside of Delhi, where the Khap Panchayats are, you will often not even hear of it. But when somebody does something wrong, the punishment is that your daughter or your mother is going to be raped. And those punishments are carried out, and nobody within the lawmaking system even is aware of these things happening. So, I don't really know how you deal with that situation, because these are situations in which the Khap acts like a private court, and everybody is so scared of being kind of, socially boycotted, nobody even talks about it. So I don't even know how you deal with that, because it's really beyond my comprehension. But within the urban context, I think it is possible. I think it's possible to give out positive images. If you look at the West, there has been so much of a difference in the way people report rape, because there are many public figures who come out and say, I was raped when I was a student, and I'm here and I've survived and this has happened to me. Maybe that doesn't happen in India so much because of the whole shame factor. But I think women need to come forward and try and explain, maybe through a kind of a sensitization campaign through social media, that rape is not the end of the world, which is the current message we're sending to people. And I think it is so offensive to say that to them, as if the only thing that matters about them is the fact that they were penetrated without their consent. That is not the most important thing about a woman. It is something that happens to her, it's a traumatic event, but there is life after that, and that is the message that we really need to put across, whether it's social media, whether it's movies, whether it's TV. But given the misogynistic kind of thing of Bollywood, I don't think it's going to happen. So maybe it'll have to happen through social media and through panel discussions like these.
Now, social media is a very powerful platform, because I remember there was a young girl who was being sexually harassed by another passenger in a plane, and she made a clip of it and it went viral. And the whole idea is for more, and what Seema is saying, more and more women, especially those who are successful, doing well, to say and then recall, narrate this trauma, whatever they've been through, to encourage others that yes, you can go beyond this, you can live beyond
to have support groups, maybe
No, I think that the government can should actually work with civil society to address this problem at various levels. Like you're talking about Kaf panchayats, the panchayats of the villages, Haryana Kaf panchayat and other villages panchayat. They have to have a dialogue and interfacing with them. They have to have people trying to educate them as to how to send out the right messages to their community or that particular village. So I'm sure, and then of course at the other levels, the district and the state and at the national level, but the campaign has to be sustained. The campaign has to be done carefully, and you also have to have moral science in schools. I remember there was a subject called moral science when we were all growing up, and it spoke about how a society is governed by certain, like general rules, like the do's, the don'ts, what is right, what is wrong, and these kinds of things. So I think one of the subjects that you have to have in primary and middle school should be moral science, where even boys are sensitized to,
boys definitely
they need sensitizing to a large extent, especially in India. And they should be, told about this and told that, this is a human being, not your property, that you can do what you want with it. I'm talking of even marital rape, right? So where men, feel entitled for sexual favors with their wives, but there's no entitlement, right? It's something that you do together. So all these things have to be addressed. And the laws, of course, have to be stringent. Like he said, nothing has happened post 2013. Nothing has happened to those rapists. One of them died, mercy be to God, and the rest of them are just languishing in our jails. I don't know why the Supreme Court doesn't take a decision and give a very strict punishment and hang them, so that at least the others get a strong message what to do and what not to do.
No, there is a law in place, but of course it's
not
retrospective.
being,
It's not.
And then I think what's also important is that we stop talking about it in a glorific manner by making sometimes movies or depicting some of these rapists in terms of
guys who eat these women. Even the heroes get away with
also I'm not just looking at the celluloid, I'm also looking at real life, where sometimes we, in the name of wanting to serve a purpose for society, we get tempted to make movies and just give them the kind of identity crisis they were grappling with in the first place, to being the heroic figure and being able. So I think it's very important to really shun them away. To just be very careful in how we talk about it, what we talk, and the very fact that we can sit here, have this discussion, and all you women can talk about it so openly and say that it is not the end of the world, there is life beyond, and we should work towards stabilizing and helping the victim, is, I think, also a milestone. Let's face it, 20 years back, such a discussion would be difficult to happen. It would be a taboo subject, and not many women would be willing to sit here, and so I think we, like I said, the changes have to happen at multi stages: the society, the family, and the feudal patriarchal approach. Coming from the British law that we have inherited, where women still is deemed as the property of the man, and most commonly the marital rape, as we talk about. I have counseled families where, noted families where for 20 years abuse, as in not subtle abuse, gross abuse continues to happen, and the woman bears it, and not only bears it, the father perpetuates and supports the daughter to stay put with it. You know, I mean, so these are all very contradicting views in terms of what we are setting as role models, because these things get spoken about and reinforce men to believe that they can women is object. And I think also, please don't mind me saying it, I mean, a woman has a right to say what she wants to say, and a woman is supposed to be beautiful in the human being's context. For all most species that I know, the men are the beautiful species, and the woman is not so beautiful. But for human beings, it is a very identified, acceptable fact, and we compliment, acknowledge it, and we feel very proud to say it. But I think that sensitivity at the level of the family, the diegetic relationship between the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, the daughter and mother, how the objectification of the women is sometimes done to propagate certain messages, or to, you know, I mean, all these things
We
have
are
to
a very
also
confused society. We are a very confused society right now. We don't have a value system right, and we have, and celluloid, Bollywood has become all pervasive. I mean, they kind of govern the moral codes, they govern the academic, kind of rules, and everything. They comment on everything, right? So the stars. So therefore, I think we have to be very careful in trying to send out the right
attitudes
message.
need to change.
Yeah, right.
And
Send out the right
also-
message.
But basically what we've come to is attitudes needs to change, and it's not just a rural problem but even an urban one. And as Seema also pointed out, maybe social media, we have tools where we can sensitize people, or education for the children, and changing society as a whole, being more sensitive, being more compassionate. I think those are really the answers that we need to find from within ourselves also. But from us, that's all. Thank you for watching this edition of Cover Story. We'll see you again same time next week.